Welcome to Doc NYC and the special Q&A for My Psychedelic Love Story. I'm Tom Powers, the festival's artistic director. I'm pleased to have with me the film's director, Errol Morris, joining us from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Errol has a long history at our festival. In our very first year, his film Tabloid was the closing night film. Another year, his film The Unknown Known was the opening night film. 3 years ago, he received our Lifetime Achievement honor, and that was the year when he had two films out in release, Wormwood and The B-Side. Errol, as I begin this, I want to acknowledge that for viewers who may not know, Joanna Harcourt-Smith passed away in October. I want to ask how you first came to meet her.
She had published a book, and she had contacted both me and my son Hamilton because she wanted to know whether we were interested in doing an adaptation of the book on film. And we were both interested. Although Hamilton, as it turns out, was very busy with his series for Vice, the third season of Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia. And although he's been tangentially involved in the production, really it was left to me to put this all together. Me and this extraordinary group of people that I work with, including my editor, Stephen Hathaway.
So for anyone who doesn't know your son Hamilton's work, he does a lot of work for Vice about psychedelic drugs. I'm curious what your own experience with LSD or psychedelic drugs is.
My own experience with psychedelic drugs is not extensive, but I have had a variety of different experiences. I have never taken LSD. I'm embarrassed. Shame on you, Errol. I mean, really. I had a psychiatrist. Of course, I had a psychiatrist as a little boy. And she had done extensive research on children who had taken LSD, usually accidentally taken LSD, and the ill effects that they had experienced. And I remember her telling me people who are on the edge, presumably referring to me, should avoid taking LSD. And she scared me. I got scared. And so I should remedy that because I've taken about everything else. And I'm sure I will remedy this unfortunate omission before too much longer.
All right. Before Joanna Harcourt-Smith passed away, did she have a chance to see the film?
She saw a whole number of rough cuts, and she saw something that was very, very close to being finished. And she saw it many, many times. She saw it many times the week before she died. She died 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
You say October, well, we're still in October.
Yeah, so you and I are recording this on October 20th. When people watch it, it'll be in November. So,
yeah.
But right now, we're very close to that time.
And she watched it many times before she died and loved the film, really, truly loved the film. And I feel lucky to be able to give her this present. It's strange to have this experience so soon after the B-side. Elsa Dorfman died not so long after the movie was first screened, and she saw it many, many, many times, as did her husband, Harvey Silverglade. And it gave them I mean, I shouldn't speak for them, but it gave them some comfort. It gave Joanna some comfort. And I was very glad. I mean, it wasn't what I intended, but I'm very, very glad that it gave them such a level of comfort, um, that I had recorded this material, and in many ways, it captured something about each of these individuals. It captured something about Elsa. Elsa, who had been a friend of our family, is a friend of mine for many, many, many years. I feel we did capture something about her art and about her personality. Um, I certainly did not know Joanna Harcourt Smith as long as I knew Elsa Dorfman, but she has an extraordinary presence. She is a person very much alive, or was then, and very energetic, very passionate. And I believe we did, but I certainly hope that we captured something of her in this movie. Extraordinary character.
That absolutely comes through. I mean, this film, like many of your films, uh, wades into a territory where it's hard to pin down what happened between different points of view. Um,
Even though
and,
there's only one point of view, really.
right. There's only one point of view presented to the story, but even Joanna is acknowledging that other people, have contradictory points of view, and she even doesn't seem so sure herself of what to make of chapters of her life. How how important is it to you to to get at what actually happened in this case, or is that not really the point of this storytelling?
Um, it's always a point in the storytelling. What really happened, what really transpired, what is true, what is false. But at the forefront of this particular story, or at least how this particular story is told on film, is Joanna's personal quest to figure out what happened. We assume, I mean, this is an error, that people really actually know their own story better than anybody else. They know a version of their story, to be sure, but Joanna is an investigator in her own life. Joanna is involved as much as, perhaps certainly more so than we in the audience, me as a filmmaker, trying to figure out what happened, why it happened, what does it mean. And it's a story in many, many ways about her own quest to figure out who she is and what happened in her past. I like it.
Can you talk about the relationship between this film and your film Wormwood, which was investigating the case of a CIA agent who died under mysterious circumstances and was seemed to be part of a government LSD program?
Um, well, the one obvious connection is that they were all made by the same director. Um, Beyond that, yes, LSD is a big part of Wormwood. Wormwood is a mystery. Certainly, one element of this story strikes me as extraordinary. Um, Timothy Leary became one of the most wanted men in America, if not the world. And why? because he was arrested at the border, the US-Mexican border, for possession of something around an ounce of marijuana. All of this was triggered by some, what we would consider today to be a ridiculous drug arrest. And yet it telescoped into some extraordinary manhunt, nightmare, incarceration, whatever. That is amazing. It's amazing what we choose to prosecute, to criminalize. It is so much a story about the 70s. And oddly enough, I even was in that area. I was a graduate student in Berkeley during that period of time, but I knew very little about this story until I started to uncover it with Joanna and making this movie.
As I wrap this up, I want to ask you about the visual approach to this film. Looks like you had a lot of fun with that. Can you talk about, building out the aesthetic of this film?
Do you think that filmmaking is fun?
Well, it was a lot of fun to watch.
Oh, good. Excellent. It was a lot of fun to make. I tell myself every time I make one of these that I want to find something new. I want to find a new way of telling a story. Photographing interviews can be something that is really boring and happenstance of just sticking a camera and turning it on and turning it off. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, tried to find new ways of using interview material, photographing interview material. I like to think that my psychedelic love story is different from anything I've done before. Yes, there are elements in common, but I particularly like the use of graphics. Jeremy Landman, who did all of the graphics for the movie, did this extraordinary job. It's really quite beautiful. Igor Martinovic, who has been my cameraman on so many projects now, Wormwood, and now this project, did a beautiful job. So there you go. Do you think it looks different? I should ask you. I should be interviewing you. We should turn this around.
No, I think this film definitely has its own distinct aesthetic. You could put it alongside, Tabloid or the B side, and each of those films have their own visual palettes that is a pleasure to take in.
Someday I'm even going to convince you that American Dharma is a good film.
American Dharma? What are you talking about? I've showed American Dharma.
I've wondered whether I should I like to think of myself as being occasionally funny, ironic, maybe even perverse. But it doesn't always work with politics. People want their politics in some meat and potatoes fashion. And I'm not telling anything that people don't know. The last 4 years or whatever it's been of this presidency has been such an extraordinary nightmare. It's hard to find a way to tell stories about it, to capture it. And maybe we're just too close because as I speak, we're still 2 weeks away from the election. And I don't know whether Trump has driven America crazy. My guess is he has. but I can say with greater certainty, he's driven me crazy. This I know. Even though I earlier said we may not even know our own stories, this much I know about my own story. He's driven me crazy.
Well, Errol, we thank you for this film. We look forward to future films from you, the post-crazy Errol. And you know, it's always been a pleasure to have you part of Doc NYC. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. A great pleasure. I miss you.
Well, a future day, we'll be on stage together again.
Okay. Take care, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.